I smiled, thinking that as a kid he had such a bad mouth, was hot-headed, and most teachers said he had a poor attitude. But I never thought so. That was just his way. As I looked over at him driving on the freeway, I realized it still was his way. And God, I loved him. He looked at me as he pulled off onto the streets of L.A. "What?" he asked while turning the radio down as the song ended. Grinning at him, I reached over the console and placed my hand on his thigh before I ran it up his leg. "We're going to be late to your first award party, and it's all your fault." With a shit-eating grin on his face, he said, "So fucking worth it," as he changed the radio station. We stopped at a traffic light, and I took my hand off his leg to turn the radio station back. I heard tires squealing, and when I looked up, I saw a big black SUV with heavily tinted windows jackknifed in front of us. Its passenger door opened, and a man in a ski mask jumped out holding a gun. I screamed at Ben, "Oh my God, he has a gun!" Panic set in instantly, and I struggled to breathe as he approached Ben's side. "Get the fuck out of the car!" I was frozen in place with fear. What's going on? In my panicked state, I hit the lock button on the door, but it was already locked. My sweaty palms were shaking, and I grabbed for Ben. He looked at me, and I knew he was trying to contain his emotions. "Just keep calm, doll." My eyes were locked on the gunman as his eyes shifted to me. Terror shot through me as he tapped his gun against the window a couple of times and then pointed it at my head. Frantically, I started beating the dash and was screaming, "Drive, Ben, drive!" He pounded the steering wheel with his fists. "We're fucking blocked in." He grabbed my hand tightly while his other moved to open the door. "Call 911. I was petrified. "What are you doing?" "Whatever happens, don't get out of this car." His voice was deep and quivering. "Do you hear me?" I heard the click of the door and screamed, "Ben, don't!" He stepped onto the pavement and I yelled, "You don't have to be the hero! Come back!" Not taking my eyes off Ben, with trembling hands I managed to dial 911 before the phone slipped through my fingers. I heard a shot. Ben fell to the ground. "No! No! No!" My vision started to blur as I swallowed back the bile that rose in my throat. My screams faded into squealing police sirens. The sirens grew louder as I grew numb, and "It's Not My Time" by Three Doors Down played on the radio, while my world came crashing down. Chapter 4. The Diary of Doll. Black is everywhere. It's the ground where he fell. It's the bag his beautiful body was taken away in. It's the color of the dress I wore to his funeral. It's how I feel. And it's the color of the journal I have kept since I was 10. The journal he talked me into keeping because he had been keeping one of his own. Even then, he loved putting words on paper. I never got a thrill out of it, and now it just plummets me further into the darkness. 3 days after, March 6th. The funeral. His sister Serena took care of everything. His best friend Caleb was in town. I didn't even know he was back from his tour in Afghanistan. He helped Serena, his mother Grace, his sister, his nephew, Trent, and I sat together. That's really all I remember. 3 months later, June 9th. Each day is a test of will. Will I get out of bed? Will I take a shower? Will I leave the house? Will I eat dinner? Will I sleep on the couch, the floor, or in the spare room? Because there is no fucking way I'm going back into that bedroom. When I go in there, I see him everywhere. And when I sleep in there, I can't stop dreaming about him. The thing is, they are not dreams. They're nightmares, because when I dream he's here with me, and when I wake up, I'm alone. I had my first dream about a week after he was killed. I woke up in the middle of the night, and he was lying next to me. I laid my head on his chest to hear him breathe. I ran my hand up his stomach to feel his hard muscles. God, he felt felt so good, and I missed him so much, and here he was. So I laid my head on his chest, happy to have him back, and fell back asleep. Of course, when I woke up in the morning, he was gone. I had my second dream after Grace insisted on taking me to the doctor because she knew I wasn't sleeping well. The doctor prescribed Ambien, and that night I decided to sleep in our room. Grace stayed with me, as she often did, and I fell asleep easily. I woke up in darkness. He was leaning over me, kissing me, running his hand up my thigh and under my shorts. He moved my panties to the side and plunged his finger inside me before removing my panties. Then he removed his boxers and slid inside me easily, moving slow at first, then faster, his thrust increasing until he found his release. That is when I woke up and realized he wasn't here. I was alone again, and my dream was just a sweet memory of what we had done so many times before he was killed. The nightmares of his death come no matter where I sleep. They are of that night, the road we took, the stoplight, the gun, the loud echoing sound of the bullet that fired out of its chamber, him calling me by my full name, and him falling to the ground, blood everywhere. In my nightmares we take different roads and stop at different lights, but the outcome is always the same. He calls me by my full name, and then he dies. Dahlia. Death. Those two words have echoed in my head almost every night. The police called Grace last week to let her know they had arrested the man who killed him. They found the gun he used. His fingerprints were all over it, which led the police directly to him. He later confessed to the shooting. Serena came by to let me know because Grace couldn't talk about it. She was just too upset. Caleb stopped by later to check on me and ended up sleeping on the couch. He's worried about me, so he crashes here a lot lately. 6 months later, September 15th. I haven't been coping well with his death, with life without him. I know this. I still can't say his name. He was my friend, my love, my everything. When my parents died, I was only 14 years old, and even though I moved in with my uncle, I would have felt really alone if it wasn't for Ben's tender affection. My uncle was a shell of a man who had lost his wife and only brother in the plane crash that took them all from us. The crash that not only ended my life as I knew it, but also any dreams of performing at the Greek where my father wanted so much to see me on stage. I never thought I would recover from losing my parents, but even at 14, Ben was not only my best friend, but also my sole source of comfort. We spent every day together in the year following my parents' death, and we formed an unbreakable bond. When tragedy struck again, there he was, my rock, the mountain I depended on to give me strength. I don't really remember my parents' funeral. I think I blocked out most of that devastating time. But I do remember him sitting next to me when my uncle died, staying with me, taking care of me just as he had done when I lost my parents. But he couldn't do that when he died. I remember my uncle's funeral well. I was kneeling in the pew of the empty church, crying as he came to sit beside me, pulling me onto the bench. Smoothing out the wrinkles in my black skirt, he said, "I've looked everywhere for you, doll. What are you doing here so early?" Looking around, I noticed there was no one else in the church and thought how appropriate that was. I looked into his blue eyes and cried. "I'm all alone now." I shifted my gaze quickly to look somewhere else, anywhere but at him. I didn't want him to see me crying. I was stronger than that. I was a girl who knew death well. As I looked back to the front of the church, I caught sight of Jesus on the cross. The colors from the stained glass windows reflected on the statue, and Jesus suddenly looked amazingly beautiful and tranquil. I wished I could feel that much at peace. Cupping my chin, he turned me to face him as he looked at me with his crystal blue eyes. "You will never be alone. You will always have me. You know that, right, doll?" But I don't have him. He's gone, just like the rest of my family. And I'm alone. 9 months later, December 18th. Recently, I've started leaving the house, but I feel like I have no hope, nothing to look forward to. I haven't gone back to work. I don't really have to work, for the money anyway. Not that money matters to me in the least. Between what my parents left me and what he left me, along with the mortgage insurance that paid off the house, financially, I'm secure. Emotionally, that's a different story. I can't seem to care about anything. Grace and Ari stop by almost every day. Serena comes as often as she can. Caleb brings dinner at least once a week and stays to watch TV until I fall asleep. These are the only people I have left in the world now. I've had many friends, but these are the only people I've stayed close with. They try to get me to go out with them, lunch, movies, errands even, but I can't seem to go anywhere without breaking down. My last breakdown was mid-October. Serena brought me to the farmer's market to get apples because she wanted to make an apple pie. I didn't want to go, but she insisted. When we got to the market, I saw that the outside was decorated with pumpkins and bales of hay. Off to the side of the entrance was a huge display of ghosts and goblins. I didn't open the car door. I couldn't. I told Serena to go in without me. She was used to my mood swings and didn't argue anymore, so she went on ahead. As I stared at the Halloween display with tears streaming down my face, I remembered our first Halloween party together as freshmen in college. His fraternity house was having a party, and at the last minute he told me we had to dress up. I was so pissed because he knew I didn't dress up for Halloween, and even if I did, we didn't have costumes to wear. I was so mad at him, I was seeing red. My mouth started spewing nasty words before I could stop myself. Why do you always have to do things last minute? Can't you get your shit together just once and think ahead? Not answering, not arguing back, not even looking at me, he strode over to the bed and grabbed the 2 sheets off it. He still hadn't said a word, even as my yelling continued. As I watched him, my fury only grew. "What the fuck are you doing now?" Taking the sheets into his bathroom, he came out holding a pair of nail scissors. He walked over to me with the sheets in his hands. He started cutting holes in one. When he was done, he grinned at me. "Here, you be a ghost," he announced, while tossing the cut-up sheet over my head. "And I'll be a goblin," he said while cutting the other sheet into strips and wrapping his body with it. "I'm not wearing that. I'm not wearing any costume. I hate Halloween," I hissed at him as I pulled it off my head. He knew I hated Halloween, and I knew he knew why. Of course he knew why. "Fine then. Be your own fucking gorgeous self," he said, grinning as he pulled me to him and kissed me hard. "Now let's go to the fucking party and have some fun." And just like that, we went to the party. He didn't take my shit. He just took care of the situation, of me, always. So as I sat in Serena's car missing him and remembering that day, I thought, God, he definitely had his flaws, but he always knew how to win me over. I wish I could have done the same for him, but it never worked out that way. When he was mad at me, his anger would linger no matter what I tried to do or say. It could last 1 hour or 1 day. I had learned to just stay away and let him come to me when he was ready. He didn't express his love in words very often, but his gestures more than made up for it. At the end of the day, he always made sure I knew how much he loved me. That's just one of the many things I miss every day. 12 months later, March 4th, 2011. Grace insisted I stay with her for a week, and she took me to see my therapist every day. She received an update on his killer. The police told her the shooter would be standing trial within the next 12 months. I didn't mind staying with her because loneliness and heartbreak were eating away at me. Yesterday was the anniversary of his death, and after visiting the cemetery, Grace sat me down and told me it was time to take my ring off. She handed me a long white gold chain she had bought and told me to wear the ring around my neck until I felt I could take it off and put it away forever. She reminded me that the ring and Ben would be a fond memory that I would have forever, but it was time to start living my life. She cried more that day than I'd seen her cry in the past year, and I realized just how deep her grief ran too. After arriving home, I sat outside on the stone patio I love so much. It was quiet and peaceful, my own private oasis with a pebble-stone path that leads to a pool. I noticed the purple flowers from the salvia had bloomed. Most of the wildflowers were starting to bloom. I started to cry thinking spring was here already. Another season alone. Walking down the pathway, I saw that butterflies were everywhere. I sat in one of the Adirondack chairs in the back of the patio and looked at the dazzling ring on my hand. He picked out the 2.5-carat Tiffany bezel princess cut ring himself and told me it reminded him of me. The platinum set diamond is elegant, modern, and simply radiant. As I twisted it around my finger, I thought back on the day he proposed. I'd just graduated from grad school, and he was already working full-time at the paper. We had both been really busy, so I insisted he take off work the Monday after my graduation, and he surprisingly agreed, saying we needed to spend some time together. Having just moved into our house in Laguna Beach, we decided to get some things done on Sunday and make Monday our fun day. We woke up early that morning. I stepped into the backyard to watch the sunrise, and I recall the way my skin pricked from the chill in the air. I remember the light breeze that swept through my hair. As he walked in front of me, I could see the waistband of his board shorts slightly peeking out from his jeans. I threw on my favorite J. Crew black and white striped sweater over my bikini. We packed up the BMW M5 Touring with all our gear and headed to Rockpile Beach. I didn't really care for the surfing there, but he loved it. The coast has a sick reef break right now. Depending on the conditions, we could catch a right at the north corner, and if it comes together, it'll be cranking. Come on, doll. It only happens maybe 3 times a year, and right now is one of them. He was so excited I couldn't possibly say no. When we arrived at the beach, I looked out at the waves and gasped. The paddling channel was to the south of the beach where the rip allowed easy access to some very big, thick, and grinding waves. He took his aviator sunglasses off and watched them. They looked rough, about 8 feet high. A lot of water was rushing into the small cove. We didn't even get out of the car. He knew there was no way I was going to be able to surf those waves without getting crushed. "Go ahead, go. I'll watch you," I said, staring at the waves crashing against the rocks. "Nah, I don't have a death wish today. Another time, doll. Let's head down south," he said with his hand cupped over his blue eyes, squinting out into the vast Pacific. He put his sunglasses back on and pulled onto US 1. It was a beautiful day. We had the windows open, and I could feel the heat of the sun soaking into my skin. The Cure was blaring through the speakers. "You hungry?" "I'm starving." "Taco Bell first?" he asked with a huge smile on his face. For some reason, he only liked that particular Taco Bell. Rolling my eyes at his choice, I smiled and nodded my head. "Sure, why not? But I get to pick the dinner spot." "Sweet," he said, laughing. After lunch, he surprised me. "What do you say we grab some towels and head down to the beach where it's a little quieter? We might even catch some Z's." "You don't want to surf?" I asked as I looked out onto the blue of the Pacific, the waves ripping radiantly out to the horizon, and many surfers already on their boards. "Nah, not feeling it," he said, grabbing my hand and leading me to the car to grab the towels. We then walked down to the never-ending beach of glistening sand. We headed out a couple of miles until we were far away from the crowd. He threw a towel on the sand and picked me up, making like he was going to throw me on it. I screamed in protest as he gently laid me on the towel, bracing himself on top of me to kiss me. It was so quiet I could hear the birds squawking as they dove into the water to catch their prey. "I've missed this," he whispered while dipping his head down to kiss my neck, tickling me with his unshaven face. "And I've missed you not being around." He continued running his hands down the length of my body. "I've missed you too, you know. At least I'm finally done with school forever." I began running my fingers through his blonde hair. "Now I'll be out in the real world. No homework, no internships, no thesis. Just plain everyday work, and I'm so looking forward to it," I said as I pulled him back down to my lips and ran my hands down his back. He braced himself on his forearms and stared at me for a long time. "What?" "You," he replied. "You're just so fucking gorgeous." I shook my head and smiled at him like I always did when he said that to me. "Really, you are. I could look at you, be with you for the rest of my life," he said while standing up to reach into the inside pocket of his board shorts. He pulled out something silver and shiny, but I couldn't quite see what it was with the sun so bright and my sunglasses off. Maybe it was a coin or his watch. I couldn't tell. Then he sat back on both knees and pulled me up off my back and onto my knees. "Doll London, I've loved you my whole life, and don't ever want to know what it is like to live without you. Marry me." The wind blowing through my backyard brought me back to the present. I stopped twisting my ring as I stood up and reached into my pocket to retrieve the necklace Grace had given me. With tears in my eyes, I walked over to the flowers and sat on the grass to smell them. After I inhaled their beautiful scent, I picked one, a silent tear rolling down my face, and I decided, yes, it was time. 15 months later, May 18th. I woke up in the spare room, the room that has become my room. But when I woke up today, I felt different. I felt a little better than I did yesterday, and much better than I did last month or the month before that. I looked out the window, and the sun was shining. I decided I needed to get up, and as I did, I looked at the bare walls and my clothes thrown all over the floor. Maybe today would be the day that I go in our room. No, that room. I hated this room I was in, but couldn't help feeling that its drab, lifeless personality properly reflected how I felt. After we moved in, I never got around to decorating it. The walls and carpet are still a gloomy shade of off-white. The windows are bare, and there's very little furniture. The room has no personality. It looks exactly the same way I've been feeling. I pulled myself out of bed and walked down the hall to the bathroom, thinking about how much I hated it as well. Maybe I should go back to that room today. My room, I mentally corrected myself. My therapist wants me to call things in the house my instead of our. But I can't do that yet. I walked to the closed bedroom door at the end of the hallway, and when my hand touched the doorknob, I considered whether or not I should open it. I remembered the dreams I had when I slept in there, and how real they seemed, and I knew his presence was in there, everywhere. I mentally pushed myself to open the door and look in. It was unchanged. I hadn't let anyone go in there, not even Grace. The bed wasn't made. My dress was thrown over a chair in the corner. My many strands of white pearls and a single strand of black pearls were strung over the mirror attached to my dresser. They were my aunt's most cherished pearls, handed down from her mother, left to me when she died. I saw my running shoes under the chair as I walked across the room, touching various items on my way to the bathroom. I actually laughed as I looked at the necklaces, remembering his "pearls remind me of Grammy" comment. I started to feel like maybe time had stood still, but I knew that wasn't true. It only did in here. I looked around at all of our things and knew it was time. It would be strange not having his things here to remind me of him, but I will always remember him. He was a part of me. He is a part of me. A part of my heart, a part of my soul, a part of my everything. Always. As I stood at the dresser, I looked at his things. I grinned as I spotted his bottle of cologne, the cologne his sister bought him so long ago, the cologne he hardly ever used. He used to say, "Cologne is just a masculine name for male perfume. Either way, it's made for chicks." I laughed a little at his need to redefine words as I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Gaunt cheekbones, light splattering of freckles, unkempt hair, and tired hazel eyes. I remembered that he would always tell me, "You're so fucking gorgeous." I wonder what he'd say if he saw me now. Probably something like, "Doll, get your shit together already." Even at that I laughed because his use of obscenities wasn't really vulgar. It was just a part of his everyday vocabulary, and over the years had become a part of mine. I looked in the mirror and I saw my engagement ring hanging around my neck and the bracelet encircling my wrist. I was aching inside at the thought that this ring wouldn't hang around my neck forever, but I knew I would always wear my love bracelet. I will wear this bracelet, not just because he gave it to me the day he died, but because he gave it to me and said, "This says what I never seemed to be able to say." I never doubted his love, but that gesture more than proved it. Thinking about it almost brought me to my knees. So as I looked at the bracelet, I promised myself that it would be a constant reminder that I would always say what needs to be said. No regrets. The mirror seemed to only reflect a messy room. It is not our room. It is not that room. And it is not my room. It was just a messy room. Grace wanted to clean it up a million times, but I wouldn't let her. I wasn't ready for the memories of that beautiful day, our last day together, to be erased. But now I knew the memories could never be erased, because they were ingrained in my mind forever. Moving away from the dresser and looking around the room again, I asked myself, what have I become? But I already knew the answer. I'd become empty, almost completely void of emotion, and I didn't want to be like that anymore. I needed to let time back into this room. I knew I had to put that day away. I needed to become me again. With that thought, I reached down and grabbed my running shoes. I headed toward the door and smiled, but not before snatching my iPod. I would start my day with a run and listen to some music. I would run and clear my head. Then maybe, when I came back, I'd start what I knew I should have already started. Chapter 5. Every storm runs out of rain. Present day. Fall is in the air. There is a cool breeze all around me blowing orange, yellow, and red leaves in circles. As I exit the park to head back to my house, I pass a bunch of kids raking leaves into piles and watch as they jump in, carefree, with no worries about what lies beneath. I wonder what I would feel if I were to jump into those leaves. I have been running almost every day. Running makes me feel human again. It sets my mind free and allows me to forget everything. I ran 5 miles this morning and felt like I could have pushed myself another 5. But I promised Ari I would meet up with her. We've been meeting for lunch at least twice a week and for dinner almost every Friday night. Walking through the front door, I noticed the boxes, some labeled, some still empty, piled in the corners, and I know I should finish packing up his things. Maybe later. I've started sleeping in my room again. On the nights that I wake up thinking he is still here, I end up sleeping on the couch. But it is happening less and less these days, and so are the nightmares of his death. After taking a shower, I go out to the garage where his car is parked next to mine. Our surfboards are in the corner, and our surfing gear is piled on the shelves. He's everywhere, but nowhere at all. On the drive to the restaurant, I pass things that remind me of him, as I do every time I leave the neighborhood. He's at the corner bus stop where he would drop off Mr. Langston, our elderly neighbor, every Wednesday morning. He's at the drugstore where he would go whenever he ran out of something, always in a hurry. As memories flood my mind, and thoughts of what used to be cloud my vision, I finally realize what I have to do to move on. Today, as I drive down my street, what used to be our street, I finally realize it is time for my own personal storm to end. No umbrella can stop me from getting wet while living in that house, what used to be our house. It's like the thunder has finally stopped crackling in my head, and as the clouds begin to move away, tiny rays of sunshine start to filter in. I know I have to move out of the home we once shared. Walking into the restaurant, I smile as I spot Ari in her jet black suit and bright pink blouse, all buttoned up and put together. I glance down at my jeans, Converse sneakers, a Bon Jovi 1987 concert tour t-shirt, and my leather jacket, and I'm already anticipating the concerned look she's going to give me. I sit at the white linen clothed round table in the middle of the restaurant. She's on her cell phone, no doubt giving orders to someone. Ari hits the end call button and places her phone on the table as she stands to greet me. As expected, she looks me up and down before hugging me like I'm made of glass and might break if she squeezes too tight. "Still not eating," are the first words out of her mouth before lifting a piece of my hair as she wrinkles her nose. "Tell you, girl, I'm taking you to see my hairdresser tomorrow, and I don't want any lip from you. Your hair isn't even blonde anymore." "So nice to see you, too. How are you? Glad you can meet me for lunch." I continue, "Seriously, maybe you could start out with something like that before laying into me." I try to keep a straight face, but I can't hold back the giggle that escapes, sounding more like a snort. I know she's worried about me, but we have gone through this little exchange every time I meet her, and really, enough is enough. Last week she took me to get my nails done after having grabbed my hands and wincing at the dirt still stuck under my nails from gardening. In my defense, she called me at the last minute when I was weeding the flower bed, and I only had time for a quick shower. It's not like I'm walking around dirty and unshowered, for Christ's sakes. I decide to move on and tell her my decision. "I had a revelation on the way over here." "Really? And what would that be?" Attempting to restrain my voice as much as I can manage, while fighting back the tears, I say, "I'm going to sell the house." Concern is written on her face as she responds, "Are you sure? Are you sure you're ready? The last time Grace talked to you about the idea, you shut her down flat." I shift a little in my chair and take a sip of water. "Yeah, I'm sure. Everything about the house reminds me of Ben, and it's not just the house. It's the whole damn neighborhood. I need to do this. I know I do." As I tell Ari how I feel, as I finally start to open up to her for the first time in a long time, I realize that I just said his name. I actually used his name. I said Ben. I said the name I must have said over 1,000,000 times, until almost 2 years ago. And I know I'm starting to heal. My body tenses from the realization, and my eyes fill with tears. I try to relax and will them not to spill over. Ari reaches across the table and gently wipes at my cheek where a few of the persistent tears flow against my will. She takes a deep breath, and I see her eyes start to fill too. "I think it's a good idea. I think you need to remove yourself from the things that prevent you from moving forward." I take my napkin and wipe my mouth for no reason. I know I need to. I just don't know if I can really do it. The waiter approaches and takes our order. Once he leaves, Ari looks directly at me with concern still etched on her face. "Yes, you can. You are stronger than you think. And you have me. You have Grace and Serena too. We will all help." Putting her napkin on her lap, she gives me a slight smile. "I think moving is the best decision you've made in a while." Her voice cracks a little as she adds, "And this is none of my business, but you know that has never stopped me before, so I'm just going to throw this out there for you." She pauses for a minute, looking anywhere except at me, and then continues, "I was thinking, why don't you give his car to Trent?" Her words come out fast, and I can see the tears begin to well up in her eyes again. After all this time, Ari still hasn't been able to say his name to me, probably out of fear that I will break down. I'm sure I'm going to surprise the shit out of her with my quick response. "You know what? That's a great idea. In fact, I'll call Serena and see if it's okay. I've actually been thinking about that for a while, since Trent turns 16 next week. I take a piece of bread and rip off the crust. I dunk it in the olive oil, hoping that the distraction will stop the stinging in my eyes. I think Ben would have wanted his nephew to have his car. He loved that car and he loved Trent. I know Trent misses Ben too, surfing with him and driving to the beach with him. Trent always told Ben his car had so much power, and he loved to ride anywhere with him. Shaking my head and laughing a little, I think about how happy this will make Trent. I'm also trying not to cry at the thought of Ben's car not being parked next to mine, as I chew the piece of bread that I feel I might choke on. Ari laughs a little, but tears are rolling down her cheeks. She picks up her napkin and dabs the tears off her cheeks. God, he did love that damn car. Her laughter fades as she reaches her hand across the table and sets it next to my plate, silently asking for mine. Dahlia, you know how much he loved you. She pauses a minute like she's trying to decide if she should say something or not, as she starts to pat my hand. And because of how much he loved you, you know he would want you to move on and live your life. I think he would be happy with your decision. Removing her hand from mine, she clears her throat. Smiling and just barely laughing now, she adds, I also know if he were here, he would have kicked your ass for not making that decision sooner. Ari pauses again, raising her water glass and waiting for me to do the same. Then she clinks her glass to mine. To bright days ahead. Dahlia girl, I know they're coming. And before either of us can cry, our food arrives. We spend the rest of lunch chatting about nothing important, and I enjoy the food and the company. As we finish, Ari's tone suddenly becomes more serious. I need a favor, she says, tilting her head to the side and smiling at me. Tom quit yesterday, and I need you back at work. I'm really short-staffed in the photo department at the magazine. Dahlia, girl, please, I need you. I sigh, knowing I'm not ready to commit to anything full-time, and without thinking. I quickly answer, I'd be happy to help you out until you get someone else. No, I mean come back to work full-time. Take Tom's job. I need you. Crossing my arms and leaning back in my chair, I gaze at her slightly wavy bright blonde hair, her perky little nose, and petite-toned body. But underneath that beauty, I know, lurks a beast. I have a feeling I'm about to see that side as I bring this conversation to an end. Ari, come on. Don't ask me to make such a big decision. Don't say you need a favor and then not like my answer. It's not fucking fair. She knows I can never resist a request when someone asks with such need. I'm just a sucker like that. Always have been. I only just decided to sell the house. Let me get through that first, and then we can talk about work, okay? I look her straight in the eyes and add, but I will help you on my terms. So, is working only on an as-needed basis okay for now? Surprisingly, Ari's irritation seems to settle quickly. Sighing, she takes a sip of her water and looks at me. As she pushes her plate aside, she smirks and says, That's called freelancing, and in my defense, I didn't know you were going to come here and tell me you decided to sell your house. So, I'm sorry. Okay? She sticks her tongue out at me for good measure. I smile as I roll my eyes at her. Whatever. Do you want my help or not? She laughs, and so do I. Ari started working at sound music right out of college, while I went to grad school. She worked her way up the ladder quickly, and now manages the main features department. Once I graduated, I went to work for her as a photo stylist. My love is photography, but my passion is music. So with my degree in place, I was able to meld my love and passion together into what became a dream job. And maybe now is the time to return to work. A week later, and it's Thursday night. My routine consists of putting on my pajamas, brushing my teeth, and lying down on the couch to watch Vampire Diaries. Every Thursday, Ben and I used to watch it together. He told me he hated the show, but he always watched it with me anyway. I used to think he secretly had a crush on Elena. We would pop popcorn, get my quilt and pillows out of the closet, and lay feet to feet on our giant sofa. I've continued the tradition, only without the popcorn since Ben was always the one who ate the whole bowl anyway. Just as I settle on the sofa, with the quilt my mom and I made together, and turn on the TV, my cell phone rings. Ari's name flashes across the screen, and I roll my eyes. "What do you want?" I answer. I know, Vampire Diaries. But listen, and do not say anything, and do not say no. I have you on the 11 o'clock flight tomorrow morning to McCarran International to conduct the initial photo-style interview with River Wild. What? Are you crazy? No fucking way, I tell her, shaking my head for emphasis even though I know she can't see me. Ari ignores my outburst and tells me she's already arranged for me to meet the lead singer of the Wild Ones at Sound Music's corporate headquarters in Las Vegas tomorrow afternoon. She stresses, the lead singer, River Wild, in case I'm suddenly suffering from amnesia. Ari tells me River is in Las Vegas for some kind of promotional event and had a last-minute change in his schedule. She has no one else to do it, and he only has a small window of time for the magazine to meet with him on Friday. Then she says, and Dahlia girl, this is a huge opportunity for me and the magazine, so please. Turning down the volume on the TV and looking around at everything I have to pack, I tell her, I can't go on such short notice, you know that. I just put the house on the market. No, I know no such thing. Having your house up for sale isn't the issue. Being gone one night won't make a difference. I'm not dumb. I know you. I know what's going on in that pretty head of yours, and this has nothing to do with your crush, I promise. She stops a minute, then continues. You're afraid to see him. Your secret rock star crush. But come on, Dahlia. He probably won't even remember you. She says it so matter-of-factly I actually feel a little hurt. I think to myself that actually River Wild was my crush before he was a rock star, and no matter what she says, she's obviously setting me up so I can't say no. Ari knows I secretly swooned over him after we met at a USC campus bar many years ago. She knows he's the singer whose songs were always on repeat, not only on my iPod, but also in my head. And she knows he was the one singer I never talked to Ben about, and now she wants me to meet him again. You are going to owe me so big. You know that, right? I'll do it because I'm sure he won't remember me anyway, and even so, it's not like anything embarrassing happened, I finally managed to croak out. Thank you so much. I really do love you, Dahlia girl. Ari croons and then spends the next hour telling me the highlights of River's career to prepare me for the interview. After we hang up, my mind wanders back to how I felt that night I met River. That was still the only time someone's touch sent goosebumps up my arms. I clearly remember the feelings I felt then, feelings I have long since buried. I hope to God they don't resurface tomorrow. But how could they? Those were a young college girl's feelings, a girl who was in love with someone else anyway. Every now and then I have thoughts about our intense connection that night and wonder if it might have been more in my mind than it actually was. More like it was okay to want to believe in something you knew you couldn't possibly be. Besides, even if the connection was real, River is somewhat famous now, and I'm sure he has a lot of women after him. What does any of that matter anyway? I'm still a broken girl struggling through my grief, trying to re-enter the real world without the man who is still a part of me. I haven't paid much attention to River's career since Ben's death. Curiosity takes over and I do an internet search for his name. I read a few articles about him, backing up what Ari already told me, and download his latest songs. I slip into my bed around 11, not even realizing I never watched Vampire Diaries. Chapter 6. Begin Again. Peeking through Nevada's desert haze is the most dynamic city on Earth. As my plane circled the airport waiting to land, my stomach was in knots with a mixture of nervous excitement and downright fear. I'm nervous because this is my first day back at work in almost 2 years, but I'm excited because I finally feel like I'm doing something productive after so long. And I'm fearful because of who I will be interviewing. Well, not really fearful so much as uncertain and apprehensive, or dare I say, eager to meet with him. We've been circling for almost 45 minutes. I'm listening to the music I recently downloaded. Looking out the window and past the clouds, I can see the famous Las Vegas Strip, and I'm trying to comprehend how I allowed myself to be talked into this job. How is it that in just a few short minutes I'm going to be seeing River again? Earlier this morning, Ari texted me a list of hygiene tips I might want to consider before hitting my first freelance job. These things included shaving my legs and blow-drying my hair, both of which she knows I've done very infrequently since Ben's death. She also rudely advised me to put some thought into my wardrobe selection. Last night I carefully picked out what I was going to wear today. I decided on a white blouse, a black pencil skirt, and standard high-heeled black pumps. I woke up dreading the day ahead of me, but after listening to the Wild Ones album this morning, their music had energized me. I'd happily showered and used my favorite grapefruit-scented shampoo. I not only took extra time to lather it in and repeat the process, but I decided to ditch my chosen business attire in favor of something more fun. My showers are usually the 5-minute quick in-and-out variety, but today it lasted much longer. I felt different, maybe even excited. I'd actually danced around my bedroom before getting dressed, and I can't remember the last time I did that. Feeling concerned about my appearance for the first time in a long time, I decided casual was better than trendy, and then decided sophisticated was better than casual, and in the end went with a mix of all three. I had selected black skinny jeans and my most loved white swing top, with the kinks scripted diagonally across it and Lola underneath in black faded letters. I also threw on my gray moto leather jacket, with the hoodie snapped off, and a pair of black open-toed wedge booties. I hadn't been shopping in so long, I don't even know if the shoes were still in style, but they're comfortable. After adding some eyeliner, mascara, and lip gloss, I was ready to go. Now, as the plane finally lands, I take a deep breath and walk down the jetway. I laugh as I read the sign at the end of the walkway that says, "What happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas." As I make my way through the airport, I smile again at the noise of the slot machine handles being pulled and bells ringing for lucky winners. After collecting my luggage and baggage claim, I set foot on Sin City's pavement and wait for a taxi to take me to my destination. It's early November, and the weather is crisp and mild. As I sit in the back seat of the taxicab, I can feel the bright sunshine through the window permeate my skin. I want to embrace the warmth and take a few deep breaths, trying to curb my sudden onset of jitters. I feel so many emotions running through me as I consider the two possible extreme outcomes of meeting River today. How will I feel if he doesn't remember me? How will I feel if he does? The answer to both questions? I have no idea. Knowing I'm in a hurry, the driver tells me he will take the fastest route he can. As he's explaining that it is the longer distance around the strip, but much shorter time-wise, I zone out. God, what if he doesn't even remember me when I've never been able to forget him? Or what if he does and we still have that strong connection? Is he still adorably charming and utterly charismatic? Why am I even thinking this way? I'm here to do a job, and that's all I should be thinking about. River is just a person I have to interview to prepare for a photo shoot. I've done this job 1,000 times. Just do your job. That's all you have to do, I say to myself over and over again. I watch the crowds of people walking down the sidewalk, men and women, couples and families, winners and losers, and I think about how they're all here to forget about their everyday lives. This is the perfect day for me to do the same. Today, I'm Dahlia London, the photographer. I can be that girl. I was that girl. I am that girl. I will not be Dahlia London, poor girl whose fiancé was killed in front of her. The sunlight streaming through the cab window is reflecting off the diamonds of my bracelet. As I look out onto the street, I see a man dressed in a suit, walking while checking his phone, and I can't help but think of Ben. Ben was always multitasking, and he was able to accomplish more in a single day than I ever could in a week. I smile at the memory of the man who was so driven and so successful at such a young age. Taking deep, cleansing breaths, I look at my bracelet again and remember the reason I will never take it off. The promise I made to myself, to have no regrets. Those thoughts are what I will take with me as I interview the one man I had an almost dalliance with once, a long time ago. The taxi is approaching the office building on East Harmon Avenue, just a few blocks east of the Hard Rock Hotel, where I will be staying. Since I'm running short on time, I decide against dropping my bags off at the hotel first. I hop out of the cab, and as I do, I hear my phone ring. I answer it while grabbing my suitcase and messenger bag and make my way into the building. With my shoulder holding the phone to my ear, I open the large double doors. The lobby is quiet. It's Friday afternoon, so I suspect many employees are gone for the weekend. Ari is on the phone frantically screaming that I'm late and telling me to get up to the 7th floor immediately because River is already there. After reassuring Ari that I've arrived and I'm on my way up, I exit the elevator and hit the end call button. Practically running to get to the conference room, I trail my suitcase behind me. I turn the corner and start down the hallway where I can see through the conference room's glass wall. There he sits, River Wild, looking down at his phone. My heart is pounding at the mere sight of him, and the feelings I felt 5 years ago come flooding back. I slow down my pace, take a few deep breaths, and pause to straighten my jacket. The shift of my body weight causes my messenger bag to fall off the top of my suitcase, and it hits the marble floor with a loud noise. Looking around the empty hall, I pick up my bag and continue walking, but as I lift my eyes and River Wild comes into view, he's no longer looking at his phone. He's looking at me. He's still just as captivating as he was so long ago, but this time the word dangerous no longer applies. My legs are shaking, and my stomach is doing flip-flops as I make my way to the conference room. I'm not a nervous person by nature, but the fact that I ask myself, could love at first sight be real, when I met him that night, makes me nervous as hell. The silence in the office adds to my anxiety. The only sound is my shoes clicking across the tile floor. As I approach the door, I can see him running his hand through his hair. He's walking around the conference table toward the door, and we reach it at the same time. With a nervous grip, I grab the door handle, dropping my eyes from his as my bracelet hits against the glass, causing a sharp pain to radiate through my wrist. I wince as I stumble into him. When our bodies meet, my nervousness evaporates. I'm so close to him I can smell his soapy, just-showered scent that I remember so well. I can feel his hard body, and as I look up, I see the smooth skin on his face, and my knees buckle beneath me. Goosebumps run up my arms and down my legs. Our collision has awakened something in me, something I haven't felt in a very long time. Desire. I'm sure I'm staring as I continue to gaze into his eyes, searching for that look he gave me long ago. But before I can find it, our connection is broken. He takes a step back, and I notice his gleaming green eyes looking me up and down. Remembering I'm supposed to be Dahlia London, the interviewer, I try to calm my nerves. I drop my eyes to escape his intense gaze and begin to speak a mash of garbled words that make very little sense, even to me. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Thank you, and oh shit. Shifting my eyes into the room, embarrassed by my lack of professionalism, I somehow manage to look at him again. I take in his faded jeans, black Doc Martens and gray t-shirt with Fender written across it in black. He's still so overwhelmingly attractive. He looks exactly how I remember him. No, he looks better. Still grinning, he chuckles and crosses his arms. No apology necessary. That's the kind of collision I wouldn't mind having every day. Giving him a polite nod, I continue to stand there, and I'm wondering if he really doesn't remember me. Let me get your bags for you, he says as he moves to take them out of my hand. Crossing into the room, he sets my black messenger bag on the table in front of us before picking up my suitcase and sets it in the corner of the room next to his guitar case. I can't help but notice that his walk is still full of confidence. Turning around, he strides back to the conference table, showing no sign of recognition, and I begin to feel a little deflated. He stops at the table where I first saw him, and we stand across from each other, with the table between us. Glancing at my suitcase and pointing to the glass wall, he asks, "Are you sleeping here? Because there isn't much privacy." I let out a soft laugh, and he laughs too. Trying to decide if I should mention that we've met before, I decide against it. I'm not sure he remembers me. Actually, I'm pretty sure he doesn't, so why embarrass myself more? Since I'm here to do a job, I remove my jacket, stand up straight, and extend my hand. "Hello, I am Dahlia London from Sound Music. I'm so sorry I'm late." River extends his hand to meet mine, and I think I see a little glimmer in his eyes, but I'm not sure. "Dahlia, a flower. Well, it's nice to finally meet you," he remarks as his lopsided grin returns. "Ari has been texting me your location for the past hour," he says, glancing at his phone. "You already know who I am, so we can skip that part of the introductions. Agreed?" he asks, smirking, as he sits down and motions for me to do the same. "Sounds great," I say and take a seat. Reflecting back to that night so long ago, which now seems like yesterday, I try to see through his words. Is he playing with me? Well, this time around, I'm not playing a game. This is a business meeting, so I need to get down to business. I unzip my bag, take out my tablet, pen, and paper, and avoid looking into his eyes at all costs. The room only includes a conference table, chairs, and a credenza. There is no whiteboard, no easel, nothing to take notes on. Pulling a larger tablet and colored pencils from my bag, I place them in the center of the table. River looks inquisitively at the items. "For our final layout," I say with a grin. Leaning back in his chair and placing his hands behind his neck, River says, "Whatever you say. As long as I'm not the one drawing, anything goes." "I won't grade you on your inability to draw a simple diagram," I retort, flashing him a half grin. I start the interview by asking River for a brief history of his band. I continue with questions about the band members, their likes and dislikes for clothing and locations, and their favorite memories from their first tour. This takes about 30 minutes, and our conversation remains professional. Moving past the band's history, I ask him questions about the new album. Before answering, River gets up from his chair and strides across the room to the credenza to pour us each a glass of ice water. The room is quiet as I watch him walk. Relaxed and confident. It is the sexiest thing I have ever seen, aside from him. And as I'm staring at his backside, I notice his ass seems a bit flat because his jeans hang a little, and it's also the sexiest thing I have ever seen. River circles the table and sits next to me. This move surprises me and makes me lose my train of thought. He turns his chair to face me, points to my shirt, and says, "Lola ranks in my top 10 all-time favorite songs." It's actually on my phone. He takes his phone out of his pocket, touches the screen a few times, and shows me, in case I doubted him. "That's cool. We obviously have similar taste in music," I say, while trying to catch a glimpse at what else is in his music library. "Where did you get that t-shirt, anyway? It looks like the actual shirt sold when One for the Road was released in 1980. River asks as he stands up and pulls me up with him. I shiver as he tugs on the hem of my shirt and says, "Turn around. Let me see something." He twirls his finger in case I didn't understand his words. I give him a questioning look before I comply. Without even thinking, I jump into his game head first. His scent, his closeness, the way my body reacts to his touch have paralyzed me, and I welcome the chance to turn around so I can escape his eyes on my face. God, he's just so mesmerizing, and I need to pull myself together. His phone rings, but he ignores it. With my back to him, he pulls the collar back on my shirt and reads the tag. Holy shit, this is an original. Do you have any idea how long I've been searching for one of these? Then he makes me laugh when he apologizes. Sorry, my mother taught me better than to swear in front of women. Don't worry about it. I say shit just about